It is the Blue Room. It is our transfer deadline day special. And the only thing special about it at the moment, as we start recording this at 10:15, is that Everton are the only team in the Premier League that have not strengthened their squad this summer. In fact, they've got weaker. And we've got 45 minutes left of the deadline, but I think we've all seen the pictures of Sean Dyche going home. Who knows if Kevin Fellwell even turned up today? He seems to have had a lovely month off, aside from welcoming managers into the building and escorting them out. But I am joined by Rob Vera and Cy Magner. Dave Downey will be joining us shortly as well. And Cy, could Everton have got this more wrong this month? And I know today's been an absolute disaster, and they just seem to be flinging money at any centre forward in European football and seeing if they were going to come. But I mean, it is just the cherry on top of one of the worst months in the history of the football club, I'd say.
It's got to be like the worst. I think if they could have planned to have the worst month in the history of the football club, they wouldn't have pulled it off as magnificently as they've done this month. It's great. It's totally grim. Not only of the absolutely messed up, probably the most important transfer window we've had to deal with. They've totally alienated the fan base. You know, the fan base was always kind of split, wasn't it? In terms of like support of the board and certain board members and it's always been split. But after the last couple of weeks, well, not even weeks, it's months. They've just I don't even I can't even explain what's going on. I'm at a loss for words, which is not a good thing for being on a podcast.
Yeah, I'm sure you're warm to it, mate. Because there's plenty to talk about. I mean, Rob, it's I think we've done so many transfer shows down the years together, and I think we always midway through a window have a little joke about maybe they're just not going to sign anybody. And this window was the one where it was like, right, surely they're going to have to sign somebody because this is the worst team or the joint worst team in the league. And then we get that 40 million up front for Anthony Gordon. Everyone's feeling good over the weekend, saying, right, of course they're going to invest that in the squad. Because say what you want about Anthony Gordon, he was a first team player. He was one of only three wings we had at the time. We've only got two wingers now. He played as a centre forward at times last season when our main centre forward was out injured. Surely they're going to use some of that money to replenish the squad. And remarkably, we sit here with 40 minutes to go before the deadline, and the worst squad in the league, or joint worst squad in the league, has got weaker, and everybody else has got stronger. Rob, are you there? Si, are you there?
I'm here, Matt. I'm here.
Uh,
I think Rob's had enough.
yeah.
No, 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 no.
Oh, are you
I'm
there?
here.
You're there. Okay.
I'm absolutely here. I even started saying some really smart shit too. And then, the mute button. I mean, that pretty much sums up the day, doesn't it? So, well, Matt, look, you summed it up really well. And what I'm not going to do today is give you guys the same long summary and litany of all of Everton's downfalls and mistakes and blatant incompetence. I mean, we don't even have time. Like, if I wanted to try to talk about that, I think we would hit some kind of Zoom time limit we're not really aware of. But I think that I'm at the point where there was a word you said, Matt, when you talked about sort of our gallows humor about these discussions over the years around the transfer window. Something that, despite supporting Everton, by the way, this has always been a time of year I've thoroughly enjoyed, Matt. So you can imagine how I feel about just having no players to talk about. Like, it's so weird. And even the links weren't strong enough to really get me talking about any of them. It was just such a turgid response. And it was, like sometimes I think, well, the as bad as Everton are, at least I can kind of predict, exactly what they'll do. They'll always just do the most disappointing thing, but they've managed to not only do the most disappointing thing this time, they still managed to surprise me because it just seemed unfathomable, especially after the Danjuma thing fell through, and they clearly were acknowledging that they have a need that has to be met, and no matter what, um, that they then bank 40 million for Anthony Gordon, and then still don't go and address the need. And it's just like throw it on top of all the other things. But I never really saw this coming. I saw it coming starting about 24 hours ago. I put out a poll on Twitter about how many players do you think Everton will sign by the end of the day tomorrow. I put 0, 1, 2, and 3+ as an option, what have you. And the leader was at 36%, was 0 players. So you had a full third of the fan base that was already just like, yeah, you can see where this is going, because we all recognize those vibes, and vibes are unscientific. I can't draw them. I can't exactly define them, but it's just those feelings. And we know the feeling going into the last 24 hours when Everton haven't done the business that they're supposed to do. We all know what that feeling is like when we're like, they're not going to do it. But yet, even today, I just thought, maybe I'm being too cynical because they just absolutely have to do something today. And maybe they're going to sign Andre Ayew tomorrow and say, look, we did something, I don't know. But I think the question that I'm beginning to move on to now are questions that go beyond what we've talked about so many times, Matt. It's like, what are they doing? Why are they so incompetent? Why are they so committed to being incompetent? And despite changing positions and, and not changing other things and seeing it always fail with their approach. And surely they would look at it long enough and be like, this isn't working. We should try something different. And yet every time they do, it still turns out the same way, even, regardless of what they say. They just never seem to find a way to make that turn in the way that almost every other club can. And so now I'm moved on to the question of, there's no question this matters to all of us. And it matters to me. I just wonder from a fan relationship perspective to this club, and there's nothing more sacred than the relationship between a football club and its supporters and its true like bloodline fans, especially. I'm a second-class citizen in that regard, and I fully acknowledge that. But at some point, we all have to answer a question for ourselves of what do we continue to owe to this relationship? And I'm not saying that I have an answer as to what that is or what you should or shouldn't do as a supporter, or I'm calling for any kind of specific action, but I do think it's a question that personally and individually, when we're alone and we're thinking about why we care about Everton so much and what Everton mean to us, there does come a point where we have to grapple with that question of what do you continue to owe to what is frankly an abusive, one-sided relationship that, for this sustained period of time. And I don't know what my answer is, and I don't pretend to know what the answer is for anyone else, but I think it's really time that a lot of people have to start asking themselves tougher questions than, can we find a director of football that works or what have you? This thing needs a fundamental rethink. And to the point I've been trying to make, until Mashiri is gone, there's no salvaging this relationship for many of us.
Yeah, I mean, it's been so bad today that Rob is ready to break up with Everton. It would seem.
I'm not saying I'm breaking up. I'm saying that I'm asking questions that I never thought I would ask myself.
Yeah, Dave does join us now as well. We've only just started, Dave. Just get the lads' thoughts on the day in general, and when Rob was speaking there, it just reminded me of.
Okay? Is Rob okay?
Yeah, I think so. It just reminded me of that sign, I think, at one of the rallies against the Tories, where it said our expectations were low, but holy fuck. Like, I mean, you sort of expect everything to be bad, but to somehow end this window worse than what they started. It's just
Mm.
it's unfathomable levels of incompetency that even I thought were below Everton, and the way in which they've gone about it today, just bidding for players like Giroud, I've seen, Ismail Assar, Aubameyang, Beto from Udinese. How many names have been mentioned by serious sources today that Everton have gone after, and they've just lashed money out without any kind of thought process about what they're doing. It's just an absolute shambles, isn't it? And like I said, I thought this football club had reached an nadir, but they've plunged right below that with what they've done in the last 24 hours or so.
Well, I think that's also something to think about, that we haven't hit the lows that you've referred to there, going beneath the low, and that we can't all talk to each other and say what's the worst Everton can come to, because we can't even say that it's going to get to this level and then it won't be that bad. I think the chat we had the other day talking about eventually when Dyche was announced, and look, that's an issue in its own that it took that long, since he had the Everton job on Friday, didn't he? And we were waiting that long for that to be approved or just ticked off by the club, and they signed what they needed to sign and his contract and whatnot. And then I guess when he was talking, and I watched his interview a couple of times, and he was saying a lot of things that I was impressed with, things that I'd expect him to say in regard to what he did do about the group of players. And he was saying, I need to assess them, and I know we've got some good players and things like that. But I guess the thing now, you look back with hindsight, where he said that we'll try and do what we can. And again, this is not verbatim, but he was saying that it's more important to check out what this squad's like before, if we can do any business, we'll do it, in that sort of narrative in which he spoke towards the end of his interview. And lo and behold, the picture, I think the image that will sort of stay with us for a long time, certainly until the summer, where we can actually do something with this squad, was him leaving the club at, what was it, 20-10 when he left the club. And I think Dominic King put it on his Twitter and said that's clearly the sign that there's no more business for Everton tonight. They've concluded trying to do what they wanted to do. To see that, and the fella's only been in the job for a couple of days.
Yeah.
It makes me fear his job now. And I'm not talking like that in terms of, realistically, we go and lose at home to Arsenal. Realistically, we go and lose away at Liverpool, and then we're looking at Leeds and Villa and all that. And the February is massive for us, isn't it? But I have sympathy for the fella, but I think for those who with we've got Sean Dyche, and he's a really good manager who organises his side and makes sure they don't concede any goals and things like that. I think people right now are waking up and seeing just how difficult this is going to be for them. And sadly, people obviously take the piss out of me and how miserable I'm about Everton, even when they win games. But I said I think regardless if we've got the job, we'll be going down. And I think I'm going to double down on that right now. I don't see how we stay in the Premier League, regardless of who the manager is.
Yeah, and you look at the squad now as well, Si, and we've got a fair few centre backs there, despite a lot of reports about potentially shipping one out. Our right back for the foreseeable future is Seamus Coleman. We've got Mikalenko at left back, who is seemingly, the only viable option there, with Vinagre not really getting a sniff. We've got two wingers at the football club now after Anthony Gordon left, and one of those is Dwight McNeil, who has perpetually stunk the gaff out this year. And up front, we've got Dominic Calvert-Lewin, who can't stay fit, and Neil Maupay, who scored one goal. I mean, it's a really sorry state of affairs, isn't it? And yet again, the club have gone through another window without addressing any kind of replacement for a centre forward who we rely on so much, and who we're going to rely on so much with this new style of play you'd imagine that Sean Dyche is going to implement. And I think he's not even been on training photos this week, which have maybe got people worried. He can't do 2 sessions back to back at the moment, or even do shooting practice. It's wing and a prayer stuff, this now, isn't it?
I mean, I think people could have probably told you this time last year that we were likely to lose one of, if not both, Richarlison and Calvert-Lewin in the last summer. So why we're in a situation now where the only replacement striker. I mean, we've even lost a striker in Rondon, haven't we? Whether you could call him a legitimate striker or football player or whatever you want to, label him as. He was still another body on the team sheet who's not there now. Um, and I think it's telling as well that actually one of the main issues that we've got as well in the defence, nothing's been really we've not really even been linked with any defenders at all throughout this window. And given the fact that if you can't score goals to win games, you've got to be sure as hell as you're going to keep them out at the other end to try and win your points at least. We can't even do that. And we're looking at defenders who are, Connor Cody struggle to get into the Wolves team. We'll give you a first team place. James Tarkowski got relegated with Burnley last year. We'll give you the first team place. We labelled them with these leader categories that when they first came into the club during the summer, and it started off all pretty in the garden, but once the weather turned and we started getting into the late nights, and all that form seemed to go out the window, and now we're stuck where we're stuck. We can't score goals, and we're shipping them away, and it's just you could legitimately look at the squad there and say, apart from Jordan Pickford, and maybe despite a dip in form, Alex Iwobi, we need a complete and utter overhaul of everyone. We needed to bring in 15 players. Well, it's not realistic, obviously, but the fact that we've
Forest have done it.
well, yeah. But the fact that we've gone into I think Dave, you were saying in one of the podcasts earlier in the week, it's probably the most important window out of out of the history of the club, and we've come out of this weaker. It's I can't get my head around it, and what I can't stop thinking about is 10 years ago, over 10 years ago now, myself and a couple of other people went down to London and met with Bill Kenwright, the infamous meeting. And we talked about the state of the club. We talked about Blackburn were the hot topic at the time. And one of the things that, Bill Kenwright turned around to me in particular and said is, at least we're not Blackburn, at least we haven't got the Venkeys in. And I just looked at him and thought, is that how you measure yourself? Are those the kind of people that you're measuring yourself on? And if you now it's 10 years down the line, and it's mad to think that all this was happening 10 years ago. It's incredible like how quickly the time's passed and what's happened in between. And when you think about it, and you're looking at what the state the club are in at the moment, what we're doing or what we're not doing, everything that's happened in the past month, you take what he's said there 10, 11, 12 years ago, whenever it was, and he's the chairman, and he's still, he's got massive influence in what goes on behind the scenes and influencing the mentality, which is one of probably the most important things that gets overlooked in the football club, is the mentality. We've said it before when we've in the past when we've played bigger teams and we've failed to win and go to the big six or whatever you want to call them, the grounds, and pick up points where lesser teams have done it. And it's always pointed at them, the mentality of the squad, the mentality, but it's endemic within the club. It's the core of the club is these perennial underachievers. And it's been brought in and it's been cultivated for since, well, we were talking about bringing knives to gunfights under David Moyes, and how long ago was that?
It feels. Sorry, go on.
No, that I was rambling, to be honest, Matt.
I just
the
thought
point.
you'd finish, mate. But like, I totally agree with everything you're saying, and it sort of feels like that attitude you said about, at least we're not Club X or Club Y, which we are very much look like we're on our way to being. Admittedly, it always felt like that was there, and that was an issue at Everton. But for me, it's like that's still there, but the introduction of Farhad Mashiri into this mad mix and this incompetent football club with people with terrible mentalities has just completely expedited our decline into being a team that has got people there who have got maybe not got the right mentality, that are maybe slowly getting things wrong, and Everton is slowly starting to unravel into this cataclysmic, laughing stock really, and circus, and that's sort of the way it's gone. And I'll come to you now, Rob, because I think what else this window has done is that, it feels as though there's been a lot of people down the years, going back to what Si said there, I remember being at games where people who were protesting against the board had been laughed off, where Bill Kenwright's face was put on a screen and people applauded. And there's always been that split in regards to the people running the football club. I think up until relatively recently, but what these last few weeks seems to have done for me is just the whole world has seen it now. Like this month, and the way in which Everton have gone about various things, from what happened before that Southampton game to the way in which Farhad Mashiri's been going on radio stations, writing open letters, doing these weirdly cut interviews with the club. It's been PR gaff after PR gaff. It's been transfer failure after transfer failure. Yeah. All of this is there for the world to see now. And it feels as though everybody, including all the Everton fans, have slowly and maybe in the case of some immediately realised that these people at the top of the football club, and Farhad Mashiri, Bill Kenwright, Denise Barrett-Baxendale, Kevin Felwell, it feels like a sweeping reactive statement, but sitting here right now, it feels like absolutely none of them are fit for purpose.
Absolutely not. I mean, the entire organization should be completely. I mean, I don't even know. There's not enough hyperbole to convey how they should all be gone. And I mean, Si made some really good points about Kenwright, and I think that there is, even if he has such a tiny financial bit of control of the club now, there's no question that there's something about his presence there that stinks up the air. It poisons it puts a ceiling on any kind of sustainable progress, not because he has he can control things as much as I think some people probably attribute, but he is absolutely, in ways that are tangible and intangible, very, very he still carries a lot of weight, or not even carries weight. He still just has an impact. I don't even know how to describe it. It's so bizarre. And yet every time I think about that, I still believe that where Everton have been, if you really want to think they're sinister, I mean, where Everton have got it right is that they have, at least in a self-serving manner, is that they've refused over so many years to clarify how decisions are made, who makes them, what people's roles and remits are, etc. And what that does over time is it gets these little factions going with all of our fans, where we have one person that we blame more than we blame someone else, and then there's a lot of infighting about it and so on. I mean, I do think that that group is more and more unified in believing that it really starts with all of them. It's no longer, no one is innocent anymore. And so for me, if Bill Kenwright still has this kind of outsized influence at the club, despite his financial standing there, then that's on Farhad Mashiri for empowering him. That is on Farhad Mashiri for listening to him, and so on. I think that Mashiri I think he is the kind of person that is the quintessential tale of someone who got rich by being really good at something. And he was really good at one thing, and then took that success and decided, well, I clearly would be a great business leader. I should have my own business. I should do all of these other things. And yet he's shown time and time again that he is incapable of competency. He is incapable of empowering those with competency. He is unable to, at the end of the day, regardless of the mechanics, get basic things done. This month called for basic things to be done. And for them to not be done is just another slap in the face, especially after what looks like now pocketing 40 million in pure profit and not reinvesting even a small amount of that back into some very basic needs inside the squad. And so it's just, I'm done. It's hard for me to squint and think, well, maybe if these things go right, we'll scrape by and we'll survive. And I'm like, yeah, we did that last summer, and nothing changed when everything should have changed. And we're actually in a worse off spot than we were last season, which is hard to fathom, but that's where we're at. And so because we're there, it just is a reminder that until you kind of cut the head off the snake, this is going to continue to be this way. And it's just a perpetual insult to the fans. And it's hard for me it makes it hard to stay passionate about this thing, because it's deadening at this point.
Yeah, and Dave, as well, it also makes you think that how bad are the finances? Like how bad is our financial situation when we can't even spend, as Rob said there, 40 million in pure profit that would have looked fantastic on the books in regards to FFP. That in itself is obviously worrying for right now, but it also makes me think that if they can't spend that now, what's going to happen if they go down and they lose all that money as well? It's and I know we're thinking right now about the immediacy and trying to get points on the board and for the football club to stay in the top flight, but I mean, Jesus Christ, what's going to happen if they go down a division?
Well, I mean, the first thing, I mean, I hate to talk about this, and it's uncomfortable to talk about it if we do go down, as much as, like I said there, I think this has been on the cards for a while, because you can't cheat death in many ways, because many people are saying that on social media right now. This is the death of Everton tonight, given that they didn't bring anybody in, despite the fact we're 19th in the Premier League. If we go down, what parachute payments come in and all that. I haven't looked at that for a while. I'll see how they work these days. But then you've got a owner who will be desperate to sell. I'm not sure what state that leaves the stadium in, which he said he was still looking for investments and whatnot. That's a bit up in the air anyway. And obviously, we're all really confident it's nearly finished. How
sad's that as well? That stadium now, Dave. Whenever I go past it, you don't even get excited about seeing it anymore. You think, fucking hell, that's going to cost us a lot of money. And, that's the first thing that goes through your head. It feels more of like a financial millstone now than this sort of a chance for a great new hope, doesn't it?
Well, how many of us, and I'm included in this, how many of us viewed that stadium as something that gave us real hope? And I'm not just talking that in sort of like a fantasy sort of scenario where we think, oh, can you imagine playing them in the derby when we've got 50-odd thousand fans and all that sort of thing? They're the nice things you look at probably closer to the time. But given how much decline we've been on since Mashiri actually took over, and then getting into a scenario where we are now, plus the fact that stadium still needs funding, it feels really, really shameful. Can you imagine having younger ones who you've got into supporting Everton, and you get them little kits and all that, and you say to them, "Oh, one day it's going to be amazing. I'm going to take my little kids in there to watch Everton in one of the best stadiums in the country and all that stuff." That looks like it's going away now, doesn't it? That doesn't even look like a future that we can even talk about in any sort of confidence. And that's down to just ineptitude of so many people. I mean, have any of you been as naive to think that Everton are going to get this sorted? How long's the last time each of you thought, yeah, we look like we're going to be all right here. We're gonna rise the ladder. We're going to be a decent, Europa League club, perennial, European decent games in league cups and things like that. I mean, I can't think back of a time where I felt really confident about that, other than when the irony is that Mashiri came in and spent a load of money on pure shite, and then that's what we have left is pure shite. That team, I can't look at that squad and just take Dyche away from it for one moment. He's going to have to be a miracle worker to keep that team up, because when you look at what's going to happen, and look, podcast wise, we've got all sorts to do about this, which is like quite a fearful thought, isn't it, at the moment? But you look at the two games we're coming up with Arsenal and Liverpool. I would expect us to be comfortably adrift in the bottom three, probably bottom, but it doesn't really matter, does it? Any spot of those bottom three, I would think that Everton haven't got staying in the Premier League in their own hands.
Well, is this the worst squad in the Premier League now?
Well, I don't know if you've seen that the stat I saw, but we're the only Premier League club that didn't get any players in this month, which says a lot when we've banged on about how crap they've been for a long, long time. In the worst, haven't seen what Southampton have been like with Ward-Prowse, and haven't seen what Wolves look like they are now. The fact that we're not 20th is the only reason why you could possibly say or fathom that Everton aren't the worst club in the league. But
Matt, if you consider the fact that we were almost relegated last season and we got worse, like, we have to be, I think we sometimes like to think, yeah, we're really not that bad. We were a relegation squad that lost Richarlison, and now Anthony Gordon, and who were pretty integral in keeping us up, and we barely stayed up. So yes, if performance is actually the indicator of that, we've got to be the worst club in the league over the last 12 to 18 months.
I just can't get over the fact we've got two wingers for a manager who plays almost exclusively 4-4-2. It's like what's going on?
Tom Davis, come on down. Seamus Coleman. You're going to have everyone playing every perimeter player playing a wing position at some point.
And do you know what, Si, as well? Like, it's really, I've not got a huge amount of sympathy for him, admittedly, at this point. But Sean Dyche has come into this job. He's already got a brutal start in terms of fixtures, which me and you, Dave, were trying to put a positive spin on earlier in the week. But bloody hell. And, there's people were at the Finch Farm tonight with banners. There are people at Goodison Park putting banners up tonight. There's going to be a protest before the Arsenal game. There's going to be a sit-in afterwards. It's like, they haven't really even give this fella a chance before he's taken his first game. It's so poor on his higher-ups point of view, isn't it? That they've not only hamstrung him in terms of a squad, but it's just the mood around the football club, as well. 2 signings, and all of a sudden, people are bouncing into that game against Arsenal thinking, right, come on, fresh manager, new players, here we go. And instead, as much as we're all going to go, and I imagine everyone's going to get behind the team and try and rally them on the day, that lingering sense of toxicity and crisis, it's just going to be irrepressible, isn't it?
It's probably the hardest job any Premier League manager in the history of the Premier League has taken on board, in terms of the size of the club and what he's had to deal with. We're joined second bottom. As Rob pointed out, it's not just this transfer window that we've gone into and come out worse. It's successive transfer windows now. But I don't know about feeling sorry for him. Like, he's come into the club, and we don't know what's been said behind closed doors. What, if he's been promised, player X, Y, and Z or whatever. I'm sure that there was money available. I just, when you're looking at when players are looking at the club from the outside in, why would anyone want to join us? And that's, those kind of playing options have been running dry for the last couple of years, haven't they? Really, those big name players. But you know, he's been aware of the situation. You can't escape you know how Frank Lampard was treated. You can't escape how, you know, some of the players found out that, you know, Lampard got sacked by listening to TalkSport. So he knows the situation that he's coming into, and he knows as well that, you know, ultimately, he was second choice behind Bielsa, and that's you know, when you consider the day we've had, the months that we've had, you know, why the hell did we just not say to Bielsa, yeah, okay, we'll take it on in the summer. You come and do the under
Come and do
21s.
the under 21s. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll just accept that relegation, because Jesus Christ, we're like, we've not done anything. One, you know, it's one job, isn't it? That, you know, that these guys in the boardroom have got to do this month, and that's strengthen the squad, and they've not done that. So what? Which, you know, why are we messing around with the pretense that, you know, we're going to fight for our Premier League survival? Because how can you? What have this squad done in this season, last season, years before? You know, it's progressively got worse. What's the squad done to convince anyone within that club that we've got a fighting chance? You know, even someone who's not ever watched football before, if they've come in and watched Everton Football Club, you know, you know, from October onwards, and surely the, you know, even the daftest pundit would look at that and go, Everton needs to strengthen badly, and we've not done it.
Sorry, Rob.
Again,
Point.
it's just mad.
Matt, I was just going to ask you, and obviously I don't want to put you on the spot because you're one of my best friends, but you know when we were speaking about Machiri the other day,
I know what you're going to say. And yes, I think you were right. Let's just leave it at that.
what can I just say to the listeners, in case you haven't listened to it, is what we were talking about. And obviously, I'm not going to say about Matt and try and, you know, say anything negative about us, but we were talking about Machiri.
If people want to know what you're talking about, they should go back and listen.
All right, I'll just say one sentence. I personally think that Farhad Machiri is a fucking idiot. I said that not only on our podcast recently, but for a while I've been saying I think the man's an idiot. Either that, or he doesn't give a shit about the club. Now, I think you could probably go both ways now when we've seen what's happened since. But when he was on that thing that looks like a porn star boat, when he was talking to the FAB team, when he was doing that, did he not say that we're guaranteed to get a strikeout along those lines?
Yeah. So that was done on the Wednesday, wasn't it?
Before Wednesday just gone.
No, it was done on the Wednesday before West Ham. By which point,
that's right. Yeah,
Dan Juma was kind of booked in to do his medical, so he was obviously talking about.
Not a striker, by the way.
Yeah, but he was obviously. I think that's what he was talking about, wasn't he? Maybe with that in the bag. But I mean, it just goes to, you know, that's what happens when you do an interview on the Wednesday and don't put it out until the Monday. You get things that aren't relevant. I mean, we literally said this after we analysed it, didn't we, Dave? That there were things in that interview that had clearly been edited out because he'd obviously talked about Lampard, who got sacked after the game against West Ham, and then that's why it was also weirdly spliced together. I think.
You know, but, since then, Matt, I've been like Jim Carrey in the number 23. I don't know if you've seen it, where he just writes, just all over walls and all that because the number 23's cursed him. I feel like I'm doing that with this fella because when we did that podcast, I wrote reams and reams of stuff. Just wanted to get on my mind when we were speaking about it, what sort of muppet this fella is. How do you get that sort of attitude that he has? Is it pure ego? I'm not sure it's a question that can be answered that about this fella. And look, you know, a lot of people will be banging on about, oh, you know, it's typical Everton, we get someone in like that when we finally got a billionaire in. But how poorly this football club has been treated, now poorly it's gone. I'm almost certain that we'll hear him on the most ridiculous radio station in the world tomorrow morning talking to Jim White, saying something about something else, and that, oh, if we get to the end of this season, we can go and spend some money on players in the summer.
It'll be we tried, won't it? That's
mate, Bill's got that ready. He's probably done it already, because we know what Bill has done with all of that. I think now there's a big question, and I'm not necessarily sure I mean this as negative as the others, but what has Thelwell been doing? or has he been his hands been tied when he's come in?
Got a month off by the looks of it. Rob, go on. What did you want to say, mate? Sorry.
Well, let's talk just to piggyback off what David's, essentially asking is that, the recruitment process is broken on a lot of levels at Everton, clearly. I mean, from the business side of things, and you think about the Danjuma thing or what have you, it's like, the deal is closed when the deal is closed, not when you're 98% of the way there, not when you're 95%. And they are big into the art of almost and having kind of narratives built around why something didn't work out, but yet they'll tell you, hey, we're competent, trust us. We've got Mashiri basically in that interview. I mean, when he was asked about the board, he's like, he gave something akin to the Trump answer where he says, I only hire all the best people, I mean, and it was so ridiculous for him to be in an interview setting like that. And of course, be asked, who knows how those questions were actually delivered to him or what have you, but to be asked questions and to say with a straight face that no, trust me, these are all the best people and we've got a process that's working and blah, 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 while they're sitting in 19th. And so from that standpoint, recruitment suffers because of the dysfunction of Mashiri as a businessman. He may have made his money being, some math whiz or an accountant or whatever, but it doesn't mean that he can run a business, which he's demonstrated over and over again. But watch for the narrative to kind of subtly shift into, well, it's a real toxic environment at Everton and blah, 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 with the insinuation being that it's really, our fault. The ultimate gaslighting that Mashiri and his board are so incompetent at their work. Now, that's not to say that that Everton looks like a real fun place that when you're in a scenario where you might want to switch clubs, I can see how some of what's come out and the last few weeks at Everton and the last couple years or few years at Everton can be off-putting to someone that you're trying to recruit to the club. I understand that, but the idea that we are so bad and we are giving off such a poisonous vibe that there are players who have an opportunity to play meaningful Premier League games and earn themselves a next step up in their career, even if it's not with us. The fact that they looked at our situation and were like, nah, I'm good. I mean, it just shows you that even being a Premier League side isn't even a pull anymore. Everton have become that toxic and that poisonous of a prospect.
Well, I think I heard today that we were interested in one of the lads from Sheffield United, but he turned us down because he didn't want to be involved in a relegation scrap. Now, if a Premier League club, an established Premier League club, can't lure a championship player, that's major problems there.
Oh yeah, but I mean, Southampton are bottom of the table. How many players have they signed? 5, 6, is it?
Yeah.
In this window,
Look how many players Bournemouth have signed. Bournemouth, for the love of God.
Yeah. All you need to do is look at the what's happened over the last 6 weeks. Sorry, not 6 weeks, probably 2.5 months. Going back actually to the 2 Bournemouth games when Frank Lampard should have been sacked then. But yeah, how the club have acted since then up until today. It's been a complete and utter shambles. Dave was saying about, everyone knew that Sean Dyche was appointed on Friday, but the club, didn't decide to let us know until, was it yesterday?
Yeah, it was, yeah.
Does that not make you think that there's actual reason that they've done that? They've decided to do that because it means, that takes the pressure off us getting signings in, which we don't think we're going to do.
I mean, yesterday I saw that and thought, no, that's mad. But you look at it now.
It's the opposite, though, doesn't it? Like, don't you hire Dyche because you're like, look, staying in the Premier League is the most important thing, and therefore you go out and spend. So for them to not spend today, I just don't understand how that jives with the decision to hire a manager who signals that you're all out for Premier League survival. I don't understand it.
But isn't it similar to, was it a couple of years, was it, I might be wrong here, was it when Ross Barkley went and he went on the last
Yeah,
minute,
yeah.
and it was like everyone knew that he was going. Everyone knew he was going to Chelsea. Everyone knew the price. I think like Everton must have been the last people to know, because it was announced at the last minute of the window or something like that. And oh, by the way, yeah, we can't reinvest that money because we've run out of time. Could be something similar to that. But I mean, if you the point I was making is, if you look at how the club have acted over the last couple of weeks, that's what they're doing in the public eye. What are they doing behind the scenes? Bloody hell! Like, if you're a footballer that wants to come and, young, hungry, wants to, looking for that step up, and you'll see, and what's happening in the public is being mirrored, and potentially even worse behind the scenes. I mean, the prime example is, the struggle between, clearly, Mashiri and Kenwright in the managerial appointments.
And so the statement yesterday was hilarious, wasn't it, Si? Like, it was Ken Wright talking about how good Sean Dyche was, and then his final line was, "Oh, and Farhad agrees as well." It's like, how obvious can it be that, like,
oh god,
like, it was always like Mashiri was like, "Right, I'm gonna have a go getting my top target, and if that doesn't work, you feel free to pick whoever you want as the manager, and we'll go with them."
That's clearly how it's gone. That we say it's tongue in cheek, but how else could it have? That's the way it's played out. It's crazy, but that's it. If players are seeing that, play out in the public domain, and then, if they're getting contacted by the club and being messed about, and, we don't know what was going on with that Danjuma. We can only assume that, what we've heard on the grapevine around, the all the media work being done and stuff like that. But, as Dave said, it's on the club for not getting that over the line. Why were we bothering with these photo opportunities and interviews if he's not actually signed a piece of paper that needs to go to the FA or whatever it was that held it up. This is what I'm saying before about, how this attitude is endemic throughout the club. It's not, we're not a professional club. We're not I've seen Sunday League teams run better. We're getting their players signed on the line before the match. We can't even do that.
Yeah. I mean, we'll start to wrap this up now. I mean, Dave, I'm sure, like you said, we'll get something tomorrow from, maybe, who knows, another open letter. The second one of the month, the fourth one of the season. And they're gonna try and push that narrative, aren't they? That we all need to come together. We all need to get behind the team. We all need to try and pull them over the line again. I just don't think they're gonna get the same reception and reaction.
No,
and listen, like, I speak to Les about this on a show in December, saying that, if it comes down to it, I think we'll all go there. We'll all go to that well again. But after the way in which it's been, this month has been ran, I think the club have lost so much goodwill from the fans for various things and various PR gaps, but they've lost so much goodwill as well from the fans just by the scattergun, ridiculous approach they've taken in this window. And I think a lot of people, to go back to what Rob said, and I appreciate this is life and death for a lot of people. Some people will not be able to detach themselves from it. But I feel like an increasing number of people are just going to shrug their shoulders and go, you know what, you haven't done enough to try and help us get out of this situation. Why on earth should I?
Yeah, I think we'll see that. I think it'll be interesting to see, because you think of clubs that have gone down in the past, a lot of them won't sell out at home. A lot of them certainly won't go away. I think that's one thing you can probably, and I hope, guarantee that we're still going to go. But I think that the difference in it, the way it's happening now, is that people will want to go first and foremost this Saturday to express themselves and how disappointed they are in the club. And that's to say it quite politely, because others will, there's the sit-in, there's going to be a protest. Given now, this will put many people over the edge. Like you said, people are so connected to the club you know, personally, I think I've become a lot more connected to the club since I've been so ill for the last 18 months. Everton side of things, and again, as you've referred to it, people who go to work all week, the pleasure they have in life is from their football at the weekend, working class people and whatnot. To get to this stage now, which is the lowest it's been, and you know, I'm even going as far back as when we really were threatened by relegation under Howard, and you know what happened in '95 and all that sort of thing. It feels toxic. I find it hard to speak about it because these are things that we've mentioned before, where the club has sort of threatened to go in that direction, and thankfully it didn't in the end. Now I don't see another way out of this, and just the condition of it. That thing I mentioned yesterday, I can't get that out of my head, Matt, about what Dyche was saying, and it's blatantly obvious that he's been told that he's not going to get any sort of support from this. You think about getting him as a manager, there's no way we could have gone after anybody who was in a contract with the team because we couldn't afford it, or we wouldn't pay for it, to get somebody out who you think is going to definitely keep Everton up. That said, like I said before, I don't think anybody can keep this side up. Saturday is going to be really, really sad. And how we all get together and sort of start supporting this team who's let us down so much. I mean, that's the other issue, isn't it? When you just kick the can down the road and think about how this team's done. There's so many that we look at and think you're one massive letdown. I don't want you playing for the football club anymore. It's still got to be these players that do something for us. You still got to be Sean Dyche to get a tick out of them. And yeah, it was really nice today seeing that the pictures, funnily enough, the club had released where he's making them run all sorts of laps around Finch Farm and whatnot, and he's laughing at them and all that. Well, that's lovely. We're all saying to each other, oh, look, he's properly going to get them sorted here. I don't trust them. I don't trust any of them whatsoever. There's not one of them, due to the letdown we've seen all season, that I look at and trust and think, do you know what? That lad there is going to be the one who fights for us and keeps us in this league, because they're all a gang of shitbags. The owner's a shitbag, and the board are still fucking hiding somewhere and won't rock up on Saturday, and they still put extra security on it saying that we're all going to kick off. Well, it's just a massive joke, and somebody's laughing somewhere while we're all over the place in ourselves. And it's just, look what we do with and I say this a lot, what we do with the Blue Room and whatnot, the service type thing we provide, putting out podcasts, how many amazing people that we meet through this, and how important in my life particular the Blue Room is to me. It feels really sad, so upsetting what Everton are and what we have to do to talk about them. And I know people love it, and we, how popular the things we do are and all that, and I love that. I'm so grateful for us to being able to do that and people who speak to us. But, at a certain point, it's upsetting. The whole thing is so upsetting, and people will still listen to it. And it's just so grim and upsetting that, I don't know where this football club goes to, because you couldn't say that this is the lowest point of lowest points. There'll be something else, because the fellow who owns it is still there. The board is still there. The load of shite we've got as a team is still there. There's no point where it ends, because if we go down, that's a big tick away from many people who just scrap it. Many people who just give away the season ticket and not bother going to games. And, I've heard so many people, I'm sorry to rant on about this, but I've heard a lot of people increasingly say this season that they want us to go down. There was some fella on, I don't know, he's doing one of them space things yesterday, who come on here, I was listening to it before, and said, I honestly think that there are people who want Everton to go down so they can kick off at the board even more, which I think is a complete nonsense. But that club's not coming back. The amount of people that have said to me and others, oh, do you know what? Maybe we need to go down for a clean slate and we start again from year zero, and then we'll be all right when we come back up. If Everton Football Club went down or will go down, you won't see them again in the Premier League for a long time. It'll just go lower and lower and lower, because the same people are there still running it. And that's what's incredibly sad about this whole situation.
Si, have you got any closing thoughts, mate, just before we throw to Rob to finish off?
Yeah, it's just, what Dave said there is spot on, and it is sad. It's difficult to put into words, because this just, last season, obviously, we were in a bad position, but this feels a lot more. Even going, last season, even going into that Palace game, this feels a lot more worse. And it's more drawn out, and that's the big sort of like shame about it is, we've got another 4 or 5 months of of football to go, and it's going to be a long 4 or 5 months because the squad is threadbare, and for the people, I'm not one of these people that was, sits on my high horse and says, "Oh, I told you so." But it is frustrating for myself and people that have been involved in various groups. When we were sort of like pointing these issues out all this time ago, like I said, 10 years, it's crazy when I think about it, about what's happened in between and how quick it's gone. But I don't think this was in our worst nightmares, to be honest, and we just wanted to close the gap with the bigger clubs who we thought we were in touch and distance with. We never thought that this would come to this point, and like I say, I think it's just that the prospect of the next 4 or 5 months is grim. And Dave's right. It's going to take it's going to get worse before it gets better, because you can't be a club in the Championship paying for a 50,000 seater stadium. In a situation now where our finances isn't even complete for that stadium. There's a likelihood that work will stop on that stadium. And I dread to think, when it will.
Well, they haven't got anyone to pay for it yet, have they?
Well, that's it. And how do you attract investors in the Championship? The investors that would inject.
You'd be surprised. I think you will. I still think you would.
Do you think?
Yeah, only because and this is just me being this is just having worked in business for a long time. I will tell you that would be, especially with the stadium almost completely done and the history and the fan base and all of that, there will be someone on the outside who looks at that and says, I can buy low and get something, with some basic competence and investment. I can spring this thing back forward, and I'm gonna and once I'm back in the Premier League, I can make all my money back and then some. So I say that just from a purely almost cynical business standpoint. But notice that premise starts with new ownership. I agree with Dave. If Mashiri still owns this thing, which he's clearly fielding offers, but if he still owns this thing, we're in the Championship, I don't fancy us to come back up anytime quickly, just because we're so dysfunctional. But I think if there's a new owner, then regardless of what happens at the end of this season, and I don't want us to get relegated, obviously, but it's going to take a new owner, whether we get relegated or not, to turn this thing around.
Yeah, bad day. We will leave it there, lads. It's been cathartic, I'd say. It's probably the kindest word I can use. But yeah, just beaten down by the whole thing, and yeah, we've got the league leaders rocking up. We've actually signed some players themselves today on Saturday. So,
mate, who was didn't he get Jorginho over for 13 million from Chelsea?
Yeah, they signed him.
What the fuck's going on down there?
Yeah,
at Chelsea.
Well,
I think it's a podcast for another day. That one.
Chelsea have signed a 120 million euro midfielder, haven't they? Just like it's.
Did you see that tweet from Delaney, Matt? That Chelsea accounts for
a third
of all of England's spending. It's something crazy like that over the course of this. I want to make sure I get this right, because this is a really, when we're talking about the things, like, it's one thing to be a really incompetent club, and it's another to be incompetent in an environment where you already have so much going against you, right? But yeah, as it stands, the Spanish, German, and French leagues all have net incoming players of at least a total of 95 million. Basically it's about net spend and all this stuff. Premier League has a net expenditure of 650 million pounds, and Chelsea currently accounting for around half of that. I mean, it's just we're not even in, there's so many leagues within this league. All we're asking for is some basic competence and staying in the Premier League, and that doesn't even account for how fixed and rigged the whole system is. But for Everton to not be good at business in a league where where the rules are already kind of stacked against them, it's a death wish. It really is. And I'll be damned, they're about to see that wish come true if they're not careful. And it looks like it's headed that way.
PR team from Everton tomorrow will come out with a statement that says we can still sign players who've retired or players who no longer have contracts.
Ayew could still happen. That dream.
Get Rondon back.
Yeah. He's signed for River Plate.
Yeah.
Oh shit! Yeah, he's flying, isn't he?
He's signed for a huge club, and in South America, he's happy.
You know what? Dyche would never have binned him off. By the way, just as
no, he wouldn't at all. He absolutely wouldn't.
No.
It'd be like playing Ashley Barnes and one of the other clowns he had up front, who's like 6'9".
How? And by the way, Dave, how did we not sign some of those just kind of out of central casting? Basic guys that basic dudes from like the Midlands that he always signed for Burnley. Like why couldn't we get those guys?
Dan Vokes and Ashley Barnes. Who else did he have there? Ings. He was there for a bit, wasn't he, as well?
Couldn't even get one of like all these spare to fair dudes in like that. No one, I mean, they just smell death coming from this club. I'm telling you.
I was thinking about this before. Like, I don't know what people ramble on a bit here, but like, it must be genuinely really difficult to not sign a player in a transfer window, because you must have so many agents. Now, listen, this has been a problem at Everton down the years. Don't get me wrong, and it shouldn't be a transfer strategy. But can you imagine the amount of agents that are trying to get moves for their players and get paid themselves, and players that want to move clubs who aren't happy, etc., etc. Like,
and they're going to say their narrative is going to be that, well, we're trying to, not fall for that kind of thing. We're trying to be a smarter club, and we didn't want to pay over the. You're going to hear words like over the value, or players who couldn't improve our current squad. Crap like that. It's insane. It's gaslighting. That's what it is.
It's gaslighting. It very, very much is. We will wrap it up there now. We'll have loads coming up this week, of course, reacting to that, previewing that game against Arsenal. I mean, who knows how it's going to go.
The voice there, man. I love the voice.
It's going to feel like that for every game now. I just feel like every game's like an uphill struggle. Like for every football match going in between now and the end of the season, we're going to have the worst team on the pitch.
He's going to just put us 11 behind the ball, Matt. That's what he's going to do for the rest of the season.
13 days before the derby.
Then behind the ball. Yeah.
We'll be like the outsider in every game between now and the end, like, because we are the worst. We've got the worst squad in the league. Like, it's just bad. Right, I'm going to end this now before I start.
We all need bed right now.
Spiraling.
I'll be going into the kitchen and necking some bleach. So we'll wrap it up there. So cheers to Rob, cheers to Si. Cheers to Dave. That has been your Deadline Day podcast. Absolutely nothing happened for Everton. It's going to be grim, but we'll be there for it. We'll speak to you soon.